election that you can make.
Choose.
You choose, then to whether to terminate the lease or not becomes your choice, not the landlord.
Okay.
And then
Right,
would
right.
they be, would they have to give us the rent back from September, from the date we moved out?
You may have to sue them for that.
We think you're entitled to it, but you may have
They're
to
not
sue
gonna do
for
it
it.
voluntarily, I would imagine.
Unless you can educate them that they need to.
Okay, and I do want to check in with Bruce. Technically, we were supposed to end at 7:30, but I have a sense we still have a fair amount of questions. I'm wondering, first of all, with our panelists, how much time do you have available remaining, or does it even make sense to just do sort of maybe an individual thing versus the panel thing? I just kind of want to get a sense of the group, or should we refer people? Just
How many more questions do you think we have?
I have 6 here. Well, one is just a wrap up to this abatement question, which, let me just run through this one, at least we'll close the abatement thing, is there a legal, and I think I know the answer to this already from what you said, but I just want to wrap it up. Is there a legal way to enforce an abatement, or is it only done through mutual agreement?
No, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say, in other words, you're probably entitled to rebatement of the rent or reduction in value of the rent, but if you can't get an agreement, it's going to have to be that you sue the landlord in small claims court for that reduced rent, or you wait till the end of your lease and ask them to have it credited to you. But, I mean, there's no law that says if you don't pay me back my part rent, I can sue you. You're just gonna have to do that claim yourself.
Right,
Yeah, I would make the claim very clear at this time, and it can be taken up at a later time,
and it
either
can
at the
be,
end of the lease or through the return of the security deposit.
right, and the legalese you're looking for, Clay, is a breach of the covenant of quiet enjoyment.
Got it. Okay, so we have 9 people remaining with questions on the sign up, 5 questions on the index card. What is going to be the most expeditious way that we could handle this?
Well, I'm happy to hang for, I don't know, at least until.
I might have to leave a little bit
Yeah, I
before
know that you
but
said-
I'll stick around as long as I can.
Okay.
And I think it'd be good if we can just field some more questions.
Okay, then
now.
let's tough it out then. Thank you.
Travis, Usinger? Travis Usinger? Okay. Cynthia Cahill?
Yeah, I guess this kind of comes from looking at things overall and trying to make that communication between the tenant and the landlord. There's a lot of issues here. I think when you're talking about the value of holding on to the possibility of moving back into a place, I mean, when you talk about rent abatement, I think maybe even funds that FEMA is paying to, say, a tenant who has now gotten, their stuff is still sitting in the place. It's uninhabitable, but only because, not because it had flood damage to the tenant space, but because there's no, say, we're in Lyons, no sewer, no electricity, no running water. So it's not any fault of the landlord that it has become uninhabitable. And maybe this tenant has gotten money or will get money from FEMA for a hotel for 30 days, and yet they don't want to pay maybe any rent, or they want some abatement, but they want to still live there, so their stuff is stored there, so you've got a storage issue. You've got, maybe they're sort of double dipping if they're getting money from FEMA, plus they want their rent abated to some extent, but they want to move back in, so there's some value. So I think when it comes around to the abatement of rent for someone whose place, really say, is fine except for the catastrophe, it seems like all of that has to come into account when you're, including FEMA money, and they have another place to stay and their stuff is being stored. There's some value in all of that. So my question is that a proper way to look at it? I mean, it's not black and white, and it seems like there are all these issues. And isn't it proper to look at all of those when you talk about rent abatement and the value to that tenant of just having a place that their stuff is stored in and they get to move back into. Isn't that true?
And if you're the landlord, that's how you would present your side of it, trying to negotiate what you think is a fair compromise? Right,
Okay,
is
so
you
that's
would-
an appropriate way to look at all those things, correct?
Well,
It's an appropriate way from the landlord's perspective.
from the landlord's perspective, it certainly is. Your tenant may have slightly different perspective, and so you would want to listen to them as well,
Sure.
whatever they have to say.
I mean, the art of negotiating, there are classes
Sure.
on the art of negotiating, and that's what mediators do. Is help negotiate.
Well, on something we answered, and I'm sorry, I probably didn't hear the answer too much, but I mean, you know, if you're willing to do something like partial rent for storing the unit, it's really, it sounds ridiculous, but it's really, at least when the flood happened, it really isn't whose fault it was.
Right.
And so the real issues that come into play for you is, are you able to make the repairs now or not? Because it might be impossible for you to do it, and then it's of no fault of your own. Or is it because of a catastrophe and you want to terminate the lease? So those are other issues from the landlord standpoint, that you have those options. But you're right, I mean, one thing about the FEMA money, I know a couple of tenants that have gotten some of the money, and the double dipping issue, I think, is only applicable if they actually are keeping the money and staying in your unit, or not, or staying with friends and not spending any money. But if they're staying in a hotel, that's not really double dipping. Yeah, they're spending it on housing. So if, you know, again, I think those things all need to be talked out. You don't know if they got FEMA money. If they did, are they using it for hotels, or are they pocketing it and, you know, using it for vacation? So you have to look at all those items.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I actually have kind of a related question here, is what responsibility, if any, does the landlord have for the tenant's damaged personal possessions? And is the landlord responsible for paying to house renters elsewhere, like paying for a hotel?
Well, a couple different things. As far as damage to personal property, you have to look at the lease. That's probably the first place to look, because a lot of leases will specify that the landlord is not responsible for damage to personal property. Number two, look if renter has renter's insurance. Obviously, that would be the first place to look for it. I think the issue was raised before. If there was something that the landlord did that was somehow a breach of building code or somehow negligent, there might be a workaround around the disclaimer with regard to the damage to personal property.
Okay, I just want to make sure, your name was Cynthia? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, I'll make sure.
You got it.
Candace, Loving?
I don't think they answered the second part of that. Housing.
Oh, yeah, housing, when does the responsibility kick in for things like hotel?
For a landlord to pay for the hotel?
Yeah.
Typically not.
None.
Prevent move-out expenses.
Yes.
That's what FEMA's for.
Wait. I think maybe we better run over what the damages might be. If there is a warranty of habitability breach, if all the notices are given, and the damages are not repaired within the 5 working days, the tenant's damages can include moving expenses.
That's true.
They can also include something we haven't talked about, which I ran into with the consultation yesterday, which is the tenant paid $500 for pumps and fans. And that money that the tenant paid to try to fix the problem themselves can be reimbursed to the tenant. So, and there also is a possibility that the landlord can avoid the liability if they move you into a comparable unit, if they own, you know, multiple units. But believe it or not, I don't think there's an affirmative duty for them to pay for a hotel.
Along those lines, what Karen's saying, for, you know, the tenant's going out and spending money to do work that the landlord should have done or hired or whatever. In essence, the landlord's hiring the tenant, right? To be the contractor that comes in to do the repairs. And so, as a tenant, not only would I ask for the reimbursement of the equipment rental, but I'd want something for my labor as well. And I know, you know, somebody had mentioned earlier that, you know, you spend days and days and days moving your own personal property. That's a little bit different. But if you're repairing, if you're doing repairs to the property, and I had similarly talked to a tenant that was, the bucket brigade to keep the water from coming into the basement for 2 days.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of time. So, and that, again, time has value.
Okay, Candon's Loving, she leave? Candon's? Karen Roper?
I'd just be really quick. Do we need some kind of certificate that it's habitable again to get our tenant back in? Is there an official way that now it's okay? The mold,
Industrial,
Not really, but certainly any information and any type of data that you have would definitely be helpful. It's not like when new construction happens and there's a certificate of occupancy or something like
They come
that.
and inspect and everything? It's not like that?
Not like that unless it's, pretty extreme, I guess, and they're doing like a complete rehab, and then I guess you go to the building codes.
Yeah, this is not a certificate, but it just occurs to be something I heard in Longmont last week, which was a reminder that a lot of this repair is so extensive that it actually requires building permits. So that would certainly be involved, but I don't know that you have any duty to show the tenant that, for example, your repair bills or anything like that, just to show exactly what you did.
You might want to look at guarantees or warranties or something like that from a subcontractor, too, from the contractor. It says, we're the professionals, you're relying on us. Here's our certification to you, landlord, that this is, we've done what we need to do to make this place habitable.
Right, and if you truly wanted to dot your i's and cross your t's, and you were worried about, maybe evidence down the line, you could have an independent inspector come in, like a home inspector or something like that, a third party that could say, yeah, this is fine. So if the tenant then says, hey, it wasn't, you have a witness.
A related question is, someone has had a restoration company that will give them a certificate of restoration. They waived all leases, all tenants decided to stay. Can they come back later and claim damage to the tenants?
Damage for what?
Doesn't say, but probably, if something bad
Could be health or
Yeah.
your lungs or
yeah.
something, or...
Sure, anyone can sue for anything, as far as what they'd have to show, a causal relationship between the property and their damages.
The question really relates to, this is my question. I have a tenant who's super sensitive to any fumes, for example.
Mm.
And we were able to, get a restoration company professionally in there and get going and get this all done professionally. And now we're talking about putting the carpet back in. Old carpet has, certain new carpet has different smells and fumes, and you're gonna paint the place also. Oh my gosh, you're gonna paint.
That's a tough one, because it goes to sort of the reasonableness, and that's a real tough one.
Can we have them sign an amendment to the lease on a condition of moving back in?
I don't know if that'd be enforceable. What do you guys think?
To do what? I didn't.
Basically, that they waive any claims as far as health claims
Yeah, I don't think that would-
as a precondition.
Or that we would declare it uninhabitable if they wouldn't sign it? Is that?
By the way, we waived our leases also. We gave them, you're free to move anytime you like.
Because I don't want to open up a can of worms, but there are, also, people have certain conditions. You get into reasonable accommodations as far as what you're doing as a landlord. So you can't really say, well, no one with asthma can move in here anymore, anything like that. So it's a tough one. No clear answer on it.
I want to try to stick with our list here, and we've gotten a couple of questions just here on the side about how to get in touch with you all, if you have business cards.
or if you're taking on new clients right now.
Well, personally, my suggestion would be to buy my book. But as far as taking on clients, I'm not taking on any clients right now. I'm dealing with my own landlord issues as far as cleaning up flooding issues that I have. But I appreciate the interest.
Boulder County Bar Association does have a listing that you can look at, and I believe that you can also do some searches by topic or subject matter. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Boulder Bar, yeah.
It's commercial too.
But mine's related to the CU student. That's why I was one that I think either one of you two were.
Yeah, I'm a lawyer in the CU Student Legal Services
Yeah.
office, so my office works for CU students. So that's really what my practice is limited to, so I don't take outside clients. But if someone is a CU student, they can come to my office.
Your name Bruce?
I'm Philip Bienvenu, and then Bruce Sarbaugh is the guy sitting next to me.
Okay.
And Bruce is in a different CU office part-time, and then he does have a private practice.
Yeah, I'm in off-campus housing, which is
Off campus.
is right next door to legal services. And given the flood, it's literally the flood of students that we're getting. There's a lot of overlap right now, but I'm up at off-campus housing Tuesdays and Fridays for sure. I will be up there probably a couple more days a week for the next couple weeks.
Is there a phone number?
303-492-7053.
You know, and I haven't given that one out quite enough this week to remember.
Yeah, 492-7053 is the general line.
Real quick, do any of you know FEMA is doing stuff with commercial businesses, or is that something else? Or do they need to contact FEMA to get?
I don't, no, I think that they're doing residential households.
Okay.
Okay, Christine Smiley?
Yeah,
If you go to the disaster center, they have tons of people in
The
the whole
DHC?
building.
Okay, yeah.
And small business, the landlord part isn't, FEMA came to my house and they wouldn't cover the income property part of my house, which is 800 square feet, but they would cover me.
Yes.
Yeah.
but that may be a different part of FEMA too.
Yeah.
So probably your best thing is to go to this Access to Disaster Assistance Center or contact FEMA.
Just go out there at 54.
Because these aren't FEMA, we're not FEMA experts in this room.
Right.
5,400 or
5490.
Elizabeth?
Hi, thank you so much. Our crawl space is flooded in our house, and our house is basically sitting on about a foot of mud when you go down there. We're seeing some effects in the foundation and things like that. Our unfortunate main concern though right now is our landlord's forcing us to leave our house open, including all the windows right now. My house is completely unlocked. It's really easy to put your fist through a window, and she's claiming that there's no crime in Boulder. And
Where do you live?
and that a lot of people in Boulder own more expensive stuff than I do. So I'm trying to figure out the legality of that. We've had a really great relationship with her, and we've sent tons of emails back, but her answer is always, no, this must happen. So, and she comes by and checks all the time. And we're just afraid that this is not really helping the situation. I mean, I understand airflow is important, and I'm willing to be home as much as possible. I've been working from home, really trying to cooperate, but we're not sure she's really doing the right thing. We don't know if this is just kind of a cheap solution that's also
I don't understand
compromising our safety.
how keeping your door unlocked helps dry out the crawl space.
So yeah, it's all our windows actually. So
I would write her a letter initially, and this is, it covers a couple of different other theories of law, but I would write her a letter, and that says, this is what you have asked us to do. So you outline in writing, you've asked us to keep all of our windows open all the time.
all the time, 24/7. We have
How many
tens and tens
how
of
many people
emails.
live in your house?
Just me and my partner, and it's
Okay.
a 3-bedroom house in South Boulder.
Okay, so Randall and I are saying, this is what you've asked us to do. And we're willing to reasonably accommodate that to the extent we can. But what you've asked us to do is put ourselves at risk. And if anything happens, if someone breaks into our house and causes us physical harm or steals our property, we are going to come after you with blazing guns. It's your choice.
She's basically,
Well, they don't have to break in, they just walk in, right?
well,
Yeah.
in the windows, like I went outside and I tested it. You can push a screen in without that much force.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've tried that, and she just has been
This is
denying
also,
that,
since this is in
so.
Boulder, this is something that you could contact our office and we could explore the possibility of mediation if all parties. are
Yeah,
there.
my
And
partner
again-
actually called you guys the other day, and we were recommended to come here, so we thank you for.
And again, I think it may be an issue where your landlord's not necessarily educated as far as rights and responsibilities. And I know I said that very adversarially about this letter, but I think you need to put them on notice that she's putting you at risk.
Okay, yeah, and we have a lot of emails that we've stated that already, and that we feel that it's unfair and that we're willing to compromise and be home and try to do all we can. So it's already definitely on record, and
Yeah.
I'm more than willing to make another legal statement, but she's just been coming in and being very angry and kind of yelling at us about this.
Right, and you know, in addition to that letter, truly, if you guys feel unsafe, you need to lock your windows at night and
Yeah,
and
I'm
do whatever.
by
Just no
myself.
matter what the landlord tells you to do, you need to put your safety above everything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm not crazy.
I guess for time manager, we have two questions here. I believe they've come from people that have already asked questions, so we're going to sort of move those to the back for now, and if we can get the other questions covered prior to. Do we want to run through this?
Clay, can I follow up on that last one real quick? So what happens if you do close your windows and you lock your doors and you're safe? Take it down, I mean, if you take it to the logical conclusion, the landlord says, you're not allowing us to make repairs, we're going to evict you. And you get this 3-day notice and you go through the eviction process potentially. And then you end up explaining that in court, and I think it's a valid defense to say you're trying to be safe. It's not that you're not cooperating.
Yeah, she basically said that we'd be encouraging the growth of mold if we weren't allowing circulation, so that's how she would get us
And you
out of
can
there.
tell her she's encouraging the growth of crime.
And she just put one in yesterday after about a week of arguing back and forth.
In the crawl space will help immensely.
Yeah, definitely. We took everything out of the garage and we're leaving that open there too, so.
Okay,
Thank you.
Aaron Sanford.
Sure. Thank you for taking the time tonight to field these questions. It's been very helpful. I guess my question is kind of simple, and it has to do with landlord versus tenant terminating the lease. Hearing all the stories tonight, I feel like I'm in a pretty... Thank you. Hearing all the stories tonight, I feel like our situation is pretty good. We have a pretty good relationship with our landlord. She's offered to terminate the lease. We do have structural damage to our house. I don't know how significant it is. It's on the hillside up on Linden, and it's the structure is definitely noticeably compromised. She's been willing to let us terminate the lease, and she's given us, or it should be in the mail, check in the mail for September's rent. We also have last month's rent and a security deposit in place. She says she will give those to us back as well, as long as we clean and work with the top of the house and it's in the condition that it was in when we rented the house in May. So my question would be, is there any advantage to us as the tenants being the active party in terminating that lease, or do we want that to come from the landlord first, that termination, to ask them to leave?
No, you can agree to terminate it, and that's just as effective as one of you successfully doing it. I've seen some tenants who the landlords in fact gave them a document asking them to sign that an agreed termination of the lease. Both sides agreed to terminate the lease. And it lays out some conditions like return of security deposit. Nothing wrong with that.
So who would set the terms of the agreed termination?
It's an agreement, both of you.
It's part of negotiation.
It's an agreement, like your lease, well, not like your lease, I suppose. Landlords always fill out the lease and tenants just sign it.
Right, and I think one of the things you're asking is maybe as far as expediting return of the security deposit, is that your concern?
Expediting the return of the security deposit, what our responsibilities are in, if the structure is, it hasn't been determined if the structure is safe to enter.
Right.
What our responsibilities are in getting our stuff out and fixing any damages that we may have done.
Unfortunately, I get it. As far as that's concerned, I really think, unfortunately, under the warranty of habitability law, it doesn't specifically say that it's an expedited return of security deposit or anything like that. There's one special provision in the law, talks about unsafe, if there's gas appliances, they gotta, and you're out of there, they gotta give your security deposit back in 72 hours. But other than that, they don't. That's why, as the other attorneys suggested, probably a negotiated timing of the return would be the best way to handle that.
Okay.
So if she's giving us a reasonable offer, then take it.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And that actually answers one of the questions we had about if somebody's giving 48 hours, has terminated lease and given 48 hours to remove belongings, security deposit still stays the same.
Yeah, it's really a tough one. I think it's a problem that wasn't addressed in the law, but that's the way the law is written, unfortunately.
I had one client who had that kind of a notice, termination of the lease, get your stuff out within 48 hours, or else we'll have to evict you. And I wrote him a letter asking for one additional day, because they thought they could get it done in 3 days, but not in 2. And I think they worked that out, you know.
Technically, there's a separate law that deals with security deposit returns. With the landlord's entitled to 30 days after the termination of the lease. So if you're going to mutually terminate the lease, make sure that you negotiate a time frame for the return of the deposit. If you're talking about terminating the lease under the warranty of habitability, that pretty much really is triggered by when you move out. You give the notice, the landlord doesn't repair within 5 days. You say, we're going to move out on the 15th day or whatever. From that 15th day, then, that would start the 30 days. And unless there are other reasons.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's sort of, and it could be up to 60 days if it says so in the lease. And so, that's a really good point to focus on the security deposit, because many people don't even think about that when you're talking about the termination part.
And we've mediated some of these where we actually had the termination and they did a walkthrough 3 days later and the money changed hands 3 days later when the keys were turned over.
Sarah Watson?
My landlord's really great, has been really proactive, but I've been asking to be notified every time something was going on with their repairs, and I have a lockbox on my door so the workers can come in whenever they want, and I never know when they're coming. I was pretty proactive and got most of my stuff out in the first 36 hours of my house flooding, but didn't take my bed out, and the next time I went, my bed had been moved, it was broken, they had pulled the carpets out, and I didn't know. So then I took my bed apart, put it on the floor in the room, still waiting to hear what the next steps are. I show up on Monday, my walls are 2 foot cut high in every room, my bed's all over the floor, my mattress is covered in drywall dust, my whole house is drywall dust. And I never knew that they were coming, so I couldn't take the steps to remove my stuff. Am I responsible with my insurance company for renters to claim those items that are now damaged because of those workers my landlord hired, or is my landlord responsible for those items?
A couple different things. Yeah, certainly go after your insurance, try to see what they'll do. But a landlord, they have an obligation when they go into your unit to exercise reasonable care. And it sounds like
my house is a disaster.
Right, and that's the other thing is like the concept of reasonable care. It's different that if someone came in to change a light bulb than if they're doing flood repair. And so the question is, did the workers act in a reasonable manner, or were they just negligent? And if that's the case, then you might have some argument with the landlord as far as damages and the like. Proactively going in the future, you might be able to work out with the landlord for them to give you notice when the workers are coming in there and working out a schedule or figuring out what parts of your property they're going to be working on so that you could take the steps of moving your personal property.
Yeah, I pretty much every single day call him and say, will you please let me know when they're coming next and what they're doing? I want to know, I want to be involved,
a lot of times landlords don't know. The landlord will contact a contractor, and the landlord's not necessarily, doesn't have the control of the contractor to say, be there at this period, at this point in time. However, having said that, I think the landlord, look at your lease. Your lease generally will have a provision.
No lease.
That's why you have leases, because this stuff will, I think there's just a common law concept that the landlord needs to give you notice before they enter your property.
Okay.
And that notice doesn't just mean the landlord, but includes any agents of the landlord, which would be the contractor.
Would it be acceptable for me, so I have a shed on the property that's locked with the same lock that the house uses, and that's where most of my items are being stored right now, as well as in the back storage area that didn't get wet. Would it be reasonable for me to ask him to put a lock on that door and a different lock on the other one? I'm just concerned if people I don't know are coming into my house using a key, they can also go and, take
Sure.
mine.
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable. You're concerned about the contractors and strangers coming in and maybe
Yeah.
stealing your stuff. Sure. I think that's reasonable to ask for.
Okay, great, thank you.
It's after 8 o'clock now, and I'm kind of hungry.
Clay ordered pizza French fries.
I wish. What I'd recommend is, yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to say, if you came late and you didn't get any handouts, just go ahead and put your name, email address with a star next to it, and we'll email you the handouts.
If we weren't able to get to your question, I would encourage you to do the Colorado, the website that the Colorado Bar has out, which will be in the handouts. If you already have the handouts, we'll get that to you. They are offering free specific legal advice and could also do referrals if we were not able to get to your questions tonight. Again, we offer mediation as a low-cost or free service to people if the property is located in the Boulder city limits. I would encourage you to contact us if we could be of assistance. And I thank you for all your participation tonight. I know this has been a really hard time for everybody in the community, and hopefully some of you will be able to leave today with a better path moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.